I'd like a motion to approve the agenda and the agenda with the addendum. Catherine, Liz, any corrections to the minutes or discussion of the minutes? Catherine?
Excuse me, just on page 11, a second paragraph from the bottom. So Ms. Hyatt noted that historically the design of the ground floor reflected the design of the upper floors. So this is the Prince George building. And what I actually said was the paint color. So because in the drawings it shows one color on the ground floor and a different color above, and I didn't think that that was acceptable.
So you a little bit more saying
to delete design and change it to paint color of the ground floor reflect delete design and replace it with color of the upper floors.
Are there any other comments? Ready for the motion? All those in favor? That's carried. The next pecuniary interest. Do we have anyone with pecuniary interest in any of these applications? Catherine?
'81 to 80 King Street East.
81, 83 King. Thank you.
I need a reason.
You're involved in the sort of design, paint, colors, things like that, or design? Yeah.
Colors.
Colors. No other disclosed? Right, we'll continue. I don't believe there are any presentations, no delegations, no briefings. So we continue with business and statutory business. First item is the 35 Fifth Field Company Lane, the steps and railings at Jackson Hall. Someone will present. Ryan will speak to that application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this application is on Queen's Main campus. Oh, I'm yelling at you. And it has to do with Jackson Hall, which is a 3-story limestone building built in 1906 on 35 Fifth Field Company Lane. So this is the building that we all know. It is subject to the Queen's Heritage Easement Agreement. It was registered in 1998. It had the 3rd story added in the late 1950s, originally constructed as a gym. It is rated as excellent in the Queen's Agreement and was converted to the Department of Engineering in 1930. It was named after Professor of Engineering Arthur Jackson, and its attributes include the limestone cladding and the main entrance. So what is before you today is an application for alteration. This steps that you see, this is actually a fairly recent picture of the completed reconstruction, restoration of those limestone staircase and the construction of the center railing. And what's before you today is an application for 2 additional railings that are to flank the outside of this staircase. It was, after construction, it was determined that there was a safety hazard with the level of the knee walls coming out of that door is at the same level as the landing itself. So to ensure safety of the students and staff using this entrance, guards, new railings along the sides are proposed. They are to be similar to the center railing that runs down the building. It is an iron metal railing in a dark color, black or gray. The new railings are to go right against near the knee walls on the outside in a similar fashion. So we've reviewed this, we circulated it to the usual agencies, and had no comments received, no concerns from this committee when it was circulated. And Mr. Chair, we recommend approval, and the motion with the conditions are before you.
Committee can ask questions of the of staff, and I noticed Mr. Everett is here as well if there are questions about the masonry work and so on. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. Are there any discussion of the recommendation? Anyone having? Oh, yes. So we need a motion to approve the recommendation that you see. The recommendation to approve the refurbished handrails. So could, from Councillor Schell and Jane. So any discussion of the motion to approve? Looks straightforward. All those in favor? Opposed? None? That's carried. Thank you. Wish they were all so easy. Next application is 167 Ontario Street. This is also Part 4, I believe. This is for a sign.
If we turn the heat on, people might have more to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property is 167 Ontario Street. It's at the corner of Ontario and Johnson Streets. It is the former Grand Trunk Railway Station, formerly, well, there's the picture from the early 70s. It was recently Frankie Pesto's Italian eatery, and the heritage value of this property stems from its architect, William Newlands, who designed it, and its association with the railway, as well as his design characteristics. It was designated in 1984 under Part 4. The new owner of the property is going to repurpose the building for another restaurant. It is going to be named PJ Murphy's Irish Gastro Pub, and recently some signage was replaced on this building and some minor pointing done under staff's authority. The signs you see on the walls are in the same location size as what's there today and have been just rebranded. However, what is before this committee is a new sign that is to hang. It's to replace the neon Frankie Pesto sign above the little gabled door entranceway arch. It is to hang below and underneath that arch, but yet proud of the wall itself to allow light in through the transom that's behind. The sign, as you can see, it fits within that opening. It has evolved from comments received from this committee. The white has been lessened with a more darker sign, which is no longer going to be lit internally. It is to be lit from the lights that are existing today. So it is going to sort of minimize its impact, and that was largely based on comments from this committee and staff provided to the applicant, who's happy to oblige. So staff have reviewed this, and we are supportive of this application. We circulated it to the usual agencies, and our licensing team has noted that a business license is required. Building, of course, notes that a sign permit will be required. And the comments that were provided through Dash from this committee have been considered and addressed by the applicant themselves. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this application with the two conditions outlined.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff on this application from the committee? Catherine?
Thank you. One of the comments from, I think it was you, was about the size of the sign. And from the image I have here, it's a very large sign. And it seems to go from side to side and right up under the canopy, and so that the brickwork at the sides and at the top of the transom are completely covered. And I wondered whether it is possible to deal with that a little more sympathetically as far as the building's concerned. If you look at page, it's Exhibit A, 36, page 36, you can actually see the brickwork atop the transom, and that is all going to be covered up.
Ryan, do you want to?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant has designed the sign to sort of nestle in the canopy. The canopy sits out from the building a couple of feet. So this sign is to fit just behind the detailing on the front. Actually, this older picture shows the detailing a little more. So that detailing will once again be exposed and restored, the cross pattern in the gable itself. And this sign will sit just behind that. But as you can see, there is still some space. And given the height of the canopy itself, that brickwork in the transom will still be visible when you're coming into the building. So it's not going to be completely obscured, but the applicants would like to sort of showcase the main entrance of this building, so for their new restaurant, and we find the sign is a good compromise and certainly an improvement over the neon one that blocks all this lovely detailing.
Okay, any other comments? Questions, rather. Questions from the public? Could we have a motion from the committee to approve? Catherine and Liz. Right, there's a bit of concern about the signs concealing some features, but what appears to have happened is that it's uncovered the portico, which was previously covered, and now it's covering to some extent the transom, but I guess what staff are saying is it's a net win, but it's up to the committee to vote on the recommendations. So are there any other comments on Liz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, thank you to Ryan. I hadn't realized that the part that we worried was going to be covered is actually going to be exposed. So we've got a bit more of a win than I realized with this. So I agree. The picture, it looks pretty stark, but I think since they've agreed to change, they understand what we'd like, so I can support it. Thank you.
Any comments? Ready for the motion to approve? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. So the next item is the Heritage Easement Agreement for 652, 670 Princess Street relating to the Karnofsky building. And Ryan will be presenting this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a type of application, I guess you call it an application, that this committee doesn't see very often, but it is part of your purview and part of your requirements under the Heritage Act. So we're happy to bring this forward. This property, as you may know, is located in Williamsville on Princess Street, and it takes the entire city block between Victoria Street and Nelson Street. Nestled up in the northwest corner of this property, is the Karnofsky Bakery, a late 1840s just limestone two-story building, commercial building with residents above. The property itself, the building itself, was evaluated as far back as 2012 during the Williamsville Main Street study by Bray Heritage. It was recommended as a property of interest at that point. We then commissioned Laurie Smith Consulting in 2013 to do a 906 review of this property, and she recommended it be designated at that time. And then in 2016, it was listed on the Heritage Register as a property of interest. The heritage value, so this is the property from Princess Street that's been clad in stucco and tile for some time. And you can see the profile is still present, as well as a number of original openings. And this is the rear. There are a number of later additions added in the mid to late 20th century on the back of this building. And so the heritage value of this property is fairly extensive. This particular intersection at Victoria was sort of the core of Princess Street, or core of Williamsville historically, when Williamsville was growing in the 1840s and 1850s. This particular building was for the most part used by the Karnofsky family for their bakery. They operate a bakery in this building for over 100 years. And the attributes are listed there on the screen, and they're in the report. They include its presence on Princess Street, as well as its shape and massing, the openings, the limestone cladding, of course, and the gable roof, as well as the round arch doorway on Princess Street. The owners of this property have recently been granted approval for a 10-story mixed-use building located on this property. It has approximately 325 residential units as well as ground floor commercial space. The associated official plan and zoning amendments have been approved, and the details of site function and design are currently being refined through the site plan control application. Current drafts of this proposal are in your agenda package. The Karnofsky Bakery building is to be restored and retained as it featured prominently in its current location as a possible cafe, restaurant space with office above. So what is before us today is an application to ensure that this building is retained and restored properly and conserved into the future. An overview of the conservation approach is in your agenda package by Metropolitan Design Limited and John Cook Associates. The conservation approach is to ensure that the 1840s building is restored and conserved and adaptively reused in accordance with best practices. The later rear additions, as I noted, to the back are to be removed. The restoration plans include the removal of all the stucco and ceramic tiles, cladding on this building, and the restoration of the underlying limestone walls. That includes repairing, repointing, and replacing where necessary the stones, reconstruction of the roof structure, and replacing the roofing with a metal roofing and a standing seam profile, replacement of all windows and the doors in a replica 6x6 glazing pattern. The doors are to be an appropriate wood or wood-clad doors for the period of the building. Installation and altering of a number of the openings that have been inappropriately altered over time, particularly on the front of the building. And then the infill of the rear wall with a 2-story glass curtain wall. So in order to, as I mentioned, in order to ensure that all these works are completed in accordance with the conservation approach outlined in this report, and to conserve the cultural heritage value of the Karnofsky Bakery for the long term, the owners have agreed to enter into a heritage conservation easement agreement with the city pursuant to Part 4 of the Heritage Act. The draft agreement is included in your agenda package. The easement will also clarify and identify the cultural heritage attributes of the property that are required to be conserved. So while consideration of impact to a listed building is required in the official plan, there are no mechanisms to approve alterations to a listed property. So this agreement will act as the conservation mechanism for that and in lieu of a Part 4 designation. However, future alterations such as installation of new signage, for example, will require approval following the Part 4, Section 33 and 34 processes in the Heritage Act, which we're all familiar with. So that has been included in the easement agreement for future changes, as well, of course, as other municipal approvals, such as sign permits, building permits, and the like. So staff note that the draft easement agreement is intended to address the design and location, materiality, the draft easement agreement is not intended to address the design, location, and materiality of the new mixed-use building. Matters related to the new apartment building are being assessed by city staff through the site plan control application. The draft concept plans are the current versions that you saw in your agenda package of the design proposal for the new building. However, these designs are subject to change, or may be subject to change. The draft easement agreement is to work in tandem with the site plan agreement, so they're not to sort of conflict with each other, and that is made reference to in the agreement itself. And we do note, and I appreciate one of the members noted the inconsistency with some of the details in both those plans. I've been assured by the consultant and the owner of this development that what we're looking at on your screen is the current approach to this stone building, and the plans that are being addressed as site plan will be amended to follow these specific plans. And I would note that actually, as of this morning, this plan has been updated, and this is the most recent one showing the new metal roof as opposed to the slate shingles. And also the downspout has now been moved off of that prominent corner, which I think is excellent. So, the most significant heritage attributes of the Karnofsky Bakery building are, of course, its location, shape and profile, the limestone walls, and what's left of the original openings. So in terms of the shape and profile, the original rectangular footprint, I guess you'd call it rectangular, and two-story gable roof profiles to be conserved, as well as the twin brick chimneys. The roof structure is noted to be in very poor shape, and it is to be rebuilt, but to follow the same profile. The building's prominent and original location at the core of historic Williamsville is to be retained, and when complete, I think the proposed restoration works will make this building a prominent feature along Princess Street. So as you can see on the screen, there are a number of conservation approaches, interventions that are proposed for this property. In terms of the limestone cladding, there was a building condition report done in 2017. They did determine that the masonry of this building is in good condition and shows little sign of cracking or movement and can be repaired. There may be some damage when the stucco is taken off, but that it is hoped that it will all be restored into its original limestone, locally sourced limestone exterior, and any new stone will have to be sourced to match the existing. So while the Karnofsky Bakery building has seen many changes over the years, many of its original openings are still there. So the second floor on the north elevation, which is down on the bottom left of your screen, are all original openings, and they are to be retained in their original profile, as well as the upper floor openings on the west elevation are also in their existing location. The applicants are proposing to alter a few of the openings on the north elevation, with the exception of the arched doorway, which is to be retained, in order to repair that inappropriate alterations in its past and to bring it back into sort of a period-appropriate style. Similarly, on the east and west elevations, the windows are to match the pattern of the building of its period and to allow greater light and flexibility into the use of the building. The windows and doors, again, have been assessed as part of this condition report. They're found to be in really poor condition. They are to be replicated with a wooden sash window and a 6/6 pattern in their original shape and configuration. The doors, again, are to be a wood or a wood-clad door in an appropriate period, and all of those details are to be reviewed by staff as they are being imposed. In terms of the south elevation, the rear south wall, the first story is stone and the second story is brick currently. Most of that wall is concealed by those rear additions currently. And actually that wall is, in the condition report, is the worst as far as the conditions go. It is showing sagging and cracking and some movement. The applicant intends to, proposes to remove most of that wall, leaving reveals on either side, but replacing it with a two-story glass curtain wall. Stone that they are to remove are hoping to be reused in the front of the building where the openings to be altered. And this glass curtain wall is to provide visibility and flexibility of the use, and to allow us light into the building, as well as to improve the safety of this narrow space between this building and the new apartment building adjacent. And I would note that the most prominent walls of this building are the north and west and east elevation, which are highly visible, which are to be conserved and revealed in their entirety. The modifications to the south elevation will allow for greater flexibility and improve the safety of the site, and will have no impact on the cultural heritage attributes of this property, in our opinion, and staff support this wall. So the former Karnofsky Bakery building has been hidden under inappropriate cladding for decades and has suffered from unsympathetic alterations. The proponent's conservation approach will make a significant heritage resource a landmark in Williamsville once again, and will aid in the public's understanding and appreciation of this, the history of this area, in particular this building. The proposed easement agreement will ensure that this resource is conserved into the future. This application was circulated to this committee, who provided some comments. Most of them have been addressed in our overview. All of them have been addressed in our overview, and we did not receive any objections to the proposal. So, Mr. Chair, the motion before this committee is outlined here. It is to direct council to approve the bylaw that will enact this agreement, and to recommend council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement in its final format. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Committee can ask questions. Perhaps I'll lead off with just essentially confirming that this is a somewhat unusual approach. Normally, when we have a building which has been recognized as worthy of protection, then the procedure is to designate it, and that is not being proposed here. Instead, what's being proposed is a heritage agreement, easement agreement under the Ontario Heritage Act, which sort of does similar things, but which is probably more acceptable to the owners and applicants in view of the development that's going on around it. So I can understand that. I think our concern is whether the protection is to this building is appropriate. And I guess one very interesting thing, again, quite unusual, is that although it's not being designated, once the agreement is in place and I guess the work has been done, any future changes will follow, according to the agreement, I believe, are to follow the procedures as if it was designated. That is, it will come to this committee for approval of any changes. So this is kind of new, and that element of it is good in the sense that as the years go by and changes might want to be made, this committee will have input on whether those alterations are appropriate or not. So, yeah, I was going to ask a question, but I think I've kind of forgotten what the question. Are there any other questions from the committee members to staff? Yes. Catherine.
This relates to the curtain wall, and so we've got windows in there that I see 3 upper windows and 2 lower windows, or if they're doors, whatever. 2 colors. So what is the difference between the darker color and the blank? I mean, we've got a design basically on that curtain wall.
Mr. Chair, that's a good question. I'm really not entirely sure what the difference is. I understood it's a fully glassed, fully glazed opening. I don't know if the agent for the applicant is here. I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant has confirmed that there's no intended distinction in the glazing pattern of the window. It's just the way the elevation appears in the drawing. So if you're looking at page 72 of the applicant or the package there's no intended distinction to be made in the glazing of the windows. So they would all be glass. That's right. No distinction in color.
So the areas that show clear seem to be the doors and windows. And the rest is still glass, but it will be fixed in place, I think, soon. Other questions? Yeah. Members of the public, I have not seen any from them today. Then we should have the recommendation on the floor. Would somebody move approval of the two clauses or two recommendations or two clauses to the recommendation that you see in the application? Could we have a mover and a seconder? Catherine and Liz. Right, discussion. Perhaps I'll start by saying we should, as a committee, we should be happy that this building, which has undergone a lot of misfortune, you might say, is being brought back to sort of its proper appearance and will be protected in the future. And so that's very important. There are, I guess, in an ideal world, we might want a bit more than is given here, and I think the curtain wall at the rear has raised some concerns. As the diagrams show, the view up Victoria Street, this building actually projects, so you will see quite easily, I think, from that view, you'll see the curtain wall at the rear where, you know, there was, and maybe still is to some extent, a limestone wall. So I think the committee, or at least I, would certainly prefer that the curtain wall is much smaller. Could we have that diagram of that was just there of the, in the lower right, you can see that there are stone reveals on each end, but those reveals look pretty short. And for instance, if those reveals were extended to come right to the doors, then you would see more stone and less glass curtain. And so personally, I would like to suggest that those, that we have some assurance or an effort to increase the size of the stretch of those stone reveals. Another concern is that some of the existing windows are original 6/6 windows. I think the two on the side gable and probably two on the rear are original 6/6 windows, and we normally like to see them retained and repaired, but that doesn't appear to be present in the plans. So again, we would, we'd hopefully get a little bit more restoration. In many applications, we don't get everything we want, and this is you know, as I say, we're getting a major renovation of a building which is really in poor condition. So on balance, I'd like, you know, I would support this, but I would certainly like to see some improvement. I mean, I should mention that on page 87, Schedule C lists the items that really summarize the renovation work. And they are really not very specific in the sense that we're not going to see engineering drawings of what the widths of the stone reveals are and things like that. So we're leaving, you know, this agreement leaves quite a bit on trust, but I think we have to decide whether we're satisfied and whether the what we're getting out of this agreement is on balance reasonable and sufficient. So I suspect that this committee would not be able to amend these easement agreement items. So I don't know, you know, if somebody wishes to try that, that we could try it, but I suspect that that would not be accepted. So I've said a bit, but are there any questions or comments about the application as a whole? Councillor Schell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember when this application first appeared at planning, and that building was supposed to be torn down.
Right, I should.
And there was going to be an echo of the building in the green space. And I think that the developer thought people would be happy to have this building gone for a bit of a parquet. So it was an interesting discussion that then ensued. And to me, this is an example of where politics and history thrive because the political will was there to say, no, you shouldn't tear this down. And this committee's will was the same. And that began a process that has resulted in this that I'm really, really thrilled about. It's such an unusual building, especially the shape, you know, in years to come when people see it. And I hope that part of the reason that the developer is so okay with this is that they did the Scotiabank down on Princess Street and perhaps have received so much praise that they're not quite so unhappy to have to save a heritage building. So I think we've won in a number of ways in what could have been quite a fight. Because we hadn't designated it, it would have been quite a process, and this has kind of cut through a lot of what could have happened into something that really will be a wonderful addition to that area to help people remember what it did look like to some extent, in a little way. But particularly the unusual shape of the building, and there are many in the city that are like this. When they followed the cattle path, I guess, when they made the city, the road design. So I'm really pleased about it, and like to thank everyone involved for the result. Thank you.
Other comments?
I'm pleased with it too. I think that it's excellent. And as far as the glass curtain wall is concerned, personally feel that if you're going to make a statement, then you make a statement. And I would prefer to see it the way it is rather than have a lesser expanse of the glass. I mean, it makes very clear that history has moved on and this building is repurposed. And given that that side of the building was in a state of collapse, I like the way it's been dealt with. I think it's been done a number of times, and I think it can be really successful.
Thank you. Comments? Then ready to put the question, but I I don't know if staff will make notes of some of these comments because, as I say, there is some imprecision in the lack of detail in the proposal, so that there could be perhaps some further. I'm sure there will be further discussions between staff and the applicant about details. So perhaps they'll bear in mind the comments that were made, such as they are. So, ready for the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? None? That carries. Thank you. Yes, we move to 8183 King, and Catherine will have to withdraw. Thank you. So Alex is going to present this application.
Good morning, everybody. So 81 King Street, as most of you probably know by now, is located on the corner of King Street East and Maitland Street across from City Park. The subject property contains a 3-story Queen Anne style building. There it is before you. And again, I think most people are fairly familiar with this project. So in terms of its cultural heritage value, we all know it's designated under Parts 4 and 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It was originally a large brick house constructed in 1841 for John Watkins, but was substantially enlarged and renovated in 1886 into the 3-story residence that you see today, which was likely a design by William Newlands. It is identified as significant to the old Sydenham HCD. So moving along. So on June 26, 2018, Council approved a heritage permit for the rehabilitation of the residence from a multi-unit dwelling to a single-unit dwelling, which included repairs, alterations, additions, and selective demolition. Part of that approval was a new extended garage to the east. So the owners, upon further reflection and advice from their consultants, they wish to revise the design of that garage to include 3 additional dormers on the east elevation, and essentially this is to allow for further and fairly necessary natural lighting of the space. The drawings provided in the original permit application have been revised to provide more specific, detailed design pertaining to these alterations, while also recognizing some of the components of the building that are to be retained that were incidentally omitted at that time. So the application is basically to deal with the new garage to the 3 additional dormers, as well as a couple changes to the rear coach house stable block. So I just wanted to show you the roof plan, which shows the existing permissions. So you'll see the 3 dormers on the west elevation, as well as the rear original stable coach house block, which has a existing dormer on the east elevation and an existing dormer on the west elevation. So the first element of this application is the 3 new dormers on the east elevation of the garage. And these are intended to be aligned with and match the approved dormers on the west elevation. The only difference between them will be the required use of fire-rated glass. So the proposed design includes the exact same glazing and pattern as was approved on the west elevation, which are aluminum-clad windows, which comply with our section 5.3.2 windows in the old Sydenham plan. So the report that was previously written for the original approval noted that the absence of any windows on the east-facing elevation of the enlarged garage will ensure against any potential obtrusive overlook into the neighboring private amenity space. And one of our members did drop that point. So while this statement does remain true, it should be noted that these alterations, these 3 additional dormers, do comply with the relevant bylaw, which is 8499, particularly with respect to the minimum front wall and sidewall setbacks of the dormers and the proportion of the dormers in relation to the main roof. So taking this all into account, the location and massing of the garage is found to be in compliance with these standards that have been established by the city, and these are intended in part to limit the potential for that obtrusive overlook and loss of privacy. So the effect of adding these dormers will modestly increase the massing of this garage. So staff assessed this increased massing against the old Sydenham HCD plan, section 5.2.2 additions and section 5.4 additions. And essentially, we look to see that the additions should still be complementary to the main building and clearly secondary in terms of size. And while we do assess that the additions will result in a slight enlargement of the garage, we still see that the overall size and design of the garage will remain subordinate to the original building. And additionally, section 5.4 of the old Sydenham plan states that dormers are permitted in accordance with the zoning bylaw. So ultimately, these 3 additional dormers will not adversely impact any of the heritage attributes that are listed. We all became quite aware of that long list in the original proposal that Andre Scheinman did, carried out the HIS statement. So I'm just going to go on to the rear, and I just want to actually point out, while I'm on this slide, the retention of the east, the dormer on the east elevation of the original stable block. It was incidentally omitted in the original application, but it is intended to remain. The only change will be that there's a existing fiberglass window that will be removed, and a new aluminum clad wood window to match the design of the other windows will be installed within that opening. So on the west elevation of the rear original stable block or coach house, the applicant proposes to reconstruct and resize the existing dormer window that you see there. Essentially, this existing dormer appears to be a relatively recent addition to the coach house. So in the 1970s, when they converted this to an apartment dwelling, we believe that was added. There's a lot of evidence in terms of the modern construction. The front piece is essentially painted plywood. So the proposal is to remove this one and reconstruct 2 new dormer windows on this elevation. Go to the next slide. And so the intention here is that this part of the coach house will act as an indoor-outdoor space. And as a result, a screen door and 2 screened windows are proposed, as opposed to a solid insulated door and window. And the remainder of the opening that is around these new screen doors and windows will be filled in with stonework to match the existing as far as possible. So essentially, this is a very modest and inconspicuous design that completes this elevation and the associated voids that exist now. The stone walls and the general volume of the existing garage that may have originated during the Watkins era and is listed as an attribute will be conserved. And moreover, we don't see this proposal as having a very much of an effect on the HCD, as it's quite hidden around the corner and out of view. So in terms of comments from our committee, we had a member express support of the proposal insofar as they didn't anticipate that the dormers would have any effect on the heritage attributes of the property. We did have some concerns from another member with regards to inconsistencies between the original report and this report. So that's with regards to the potential overlook of the east dormer. So staff did ask for new drawings to be submitted so that we could clarify the retention of the eastern dormer that exists. We did review the zoning bylaw to ensure that these dormers comply with the bylaw 8499. So upon review of all the relevant materials, staff support the application, and I'll leave this recommendation before you.
Thank you. Well, this is a Part 5 application, so I first have to ask members if their comments provided through Dash were captured by the staff's report. In my case and in your case, that seems to be okay. Thank you. Now we can have questions from the public on this application. I don't think there are any. So we'll go to, let me see, yes. Yeah, so I guess we're going now to comments from the committee. Yeah, do we have to? Can't move it now. Yeah. Okay, so the procedure is we'll ask for a motion to approve at this point, and then members will provide comments that will be included in the staff report to council. So could we have a motion to approve recommendation? Thank you. Right. Now, comments from the committee members. Jane?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just wondering about the screen doors and windows and what's the, I don't quite understand how you would put that on and how it would function in the winter. I'm just bringing that up. Like snow blowing through screens, I'm not getting that.
Okay. You imagine?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I ask, the applicants are here, could I ask that they answer the question in terms of how they intend to use that space and its function?
Sorry, I didn't really catch that.
Can I ask the Derbyshires to speak to how to speak to Jane's question in terms of the functionality of the screen doors and windows?
Right, are you satisfied with that? Yeah,
Sure.
Okay. Other comments? Yes, the owners, you're welcome to respond or comment. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Our goal on that is to use that area, as Alex described, as a three-season area. And so it will be screens that will be there, and we're going to recreate storm windows that would match the front elevation of the home that would be able to be inserted in that area, so that would really lend itself to the real authentic character. I mean, that old stable, I would love you to see it sometime, is really quite extraordinary on the inside with the stone, and it's our goal to really bring it back to a feel of a stable, both inside and out. And so keeping that very authentic on the outside with the screen would be low profile and beautiful storm windows as we come into the winter season. We'll both be in the window area and in the door area. So it'll be nicely protected.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay. Yeah, I think the general response through Dash and through here is that these proposed changes are reasonable and acceptable, and they do not have significant impact on the main building, which is a major interest to us. So I'll ask for call a vote to approve staff's recommendation on this report. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Catherine, you can come back in. Right, the next application is City Hall Steps, 216 Ontario Street, and Alex will speak to this application.
Okay, so the subject property at 216 Ontario Street is the site of Kingston City Hall, where we're all sitting right now, located between Brock Street and Market Street. It was designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act in 1976, as well as designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Market Square HCD, and Kingston City Hall is also designated as a National Historic Site. That was in 1961. So the property, well, City Hall was constructed beginning in 1843. It's a two-story, monumental, classically proportioned, symmetrical limestone building. And I will just point out that one of the key exterior heritage attributes are the 4 sets of exterior secondary stairs. So the application before you today, which was deferred from last meeting, is an application under Section 42 of the Act to gain approval to repoint and apply a waterproof caulking material to the mortar joints, the north and south exit stairs on the front elevation of the building. Additionally, the application proposes the sealing of open joints and cracks on the stone treads with a removable caulking compound. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of which stairs we were looking at, so this was to orient us. So according to the department staff in facilities and construction management, the north and south stairs are in a deteriorating state of repair following years of rain, snow, and ice removal activities, which have allowed water to leach the lime from both the visible and hidden mortar joints. This has resulted in the settlement of treads, which now slope in towards the risers, as well as the water which has led to the water being unable to drain away from the exterior and penetrating the mortar joints and limestone. The varied winter temperature and heat loss have led to damaging freeze-thaw cycles, and I think most people agree that the stairs are not in a great state of repair at present. Additionally, the water has been seeping through these joints and flooring areas into the basement of City Hall. Staff have viewed the stairs on several occasions, and we've actually visited underneath the stairs and with an engineer, and we do agree that this condition is a fair assessment. So, following the application of a heritage mortar mix in 2016 and 2017, staff are concerned that this approach is not lasting through the winter. And essentially, given their current condition, they feel that reconstruction is the only long-term sustainable approach. However, in the short term, staff are tasked with assessing the impact of the proposed approach to prevent the water ingress. So this application has evolved since the first proposal in the pre-consultation that we held with the committee, which included the application of a structural repair material, which was called MG-crete, and I think some of you saw the test patches on the steps. So this method was proposed to prevent the leaks through the joints and the cracks in the treads and help to provide that forward slope on the treads. So they carried out the test patch and efforts were made to adjust the color as well as try and give the material some texture. Nonetheless, there were still many concerns regarding this test. Following the test, we had many concerns from our Heritage Committee members, specifically with regards to the fact that this was not going to be reversible. So essentially, once this MG-crete was applied, those stones were most likely not going to be able to be reused in the reconstruction. So additional advice was sought from local heritage consultants and engineering consultants. And now a new approach is proposed that essentially seeks to minimize the water penetration as far as possible, accepting that the treads will still be sloped inwards, and we just have to accept that until the point that they are reconstructed. It's ever evolving as they gain more knowledge and speak to more knowledgeable people. At present, I'm not sure if you've noticed today, they are raking out the old sand on the stairs, and they want to do some testing of this waterproof caulking compound, which is called Reconstruct. It's a very awkward word. But they're actually now considering using a harder type S lime-based mortar to see if that will get through the winter. So really the approach has radically shifted to a point where we're very comfortable in that. We hope this will minimize the water. There is actually temporary shoring underneath the stairs right now in the form of simple 2x4s put together. The engineer advised that given the settlement, they do need some support underneath until they can be reconstructed. However, that did not require a heritage permit given the temporary nature and no impact. So I'll just bring that up. So these were the test patches that were carried out. They are now also trying to do a few experiments to see if they can remove these test patches as well, which may not prove successful, but that is their intent. So I think I spoke to the consultation with the committee, and I believe that these comments have been addressed through the further advice from heritage consultants and engineers. So as it stands, staff support this application, and we're confident that this will conserve these important heritage attributes of City Hall. So I will leave this recommendation before you, which has a couple pages, but essentially they're going to carry out some test patches, and also we encourage them to consult the committee prior to the reconstruction process.
Thank you very much. So again, part 5, application, and first need to confirm that staff have captured the input through Dash from Heritage Kingston members, and in my case they have, and I think did you, yours, you're okay too, Jane, thank you. So that's fine. Questions from the public on this application? Public seems to be missing today, or pretty well. So I guess we should go straight to having the recommendation on the floor, and then Oh, sorry, do we, questions from?
On the floor, and then here, find your final comments.
Okay, no further questions from committee? Yeah,
Describe.
yeah, okay. All right, so let's have a motion to put this recommendation on the floor, and then we can make comments. So, motion to approve recommendations. Certainly I will so move, because I think it's a very good thing, and that's right. So, comments on the recommendation. Certainly I can say that I'm pleased that staff are following the approach of giving time so that good repairs can be done to these stairs without jeopardizing the existing stairs. And so I hope in future that will happen and they'll be good. So any other comments on this application? Ready for the motion? All in favor? Thank you. It's carried. Right. Next application, fairly major one, 225 King Street East, the Frontenac Club building. And again, Alex will present this application.
Okay. So as you recall, we had a pre-consultation from the application at our September 19th meeting. So I'm here today to present the formal application. So the subject property at 225 King Street East is located on the southeast corner of King and William Streets. The subject property contains the Frontenac Club, a 3-story stone commercial building. So this commercial building was designed by Edward and Crane and constructed in 1845-1846 for the Bank of Montreal. The bank occupied the building until 1906, at which point they moved to their current location at 297 King Street East. And in 1908, the building was sold to the Frontenac Club. So during their occupation, new additions were constructed, including a bowling alley and billiards room, and these additions were designed by Power & Son. The club was sold in 1934, converted into apartments, and since this time, the building has been used for a variety of uses, including a daycare and more recently a hotel. So I just wanted to, I put together this sort of overview of the building as best as I could, because it has heavily evolved over the years and grown, and this is just one way to try and help everyone kind of appreciate the different components, and I mean, feel free to call me out if I've missed something here. But I hope this helps sort of orient people as we go through the site. So in terms of the cultural heritage value, as I mentioned, it's quite a significant stone building designed for the Bank of Montreal. It is a fine example of a classical revival style. I attempted to compile a sort of list of heritage attributes since the designation bylaw does not contain them. This is just a sample. There's quite a few heritage attributes associated with this property. And I think you'll notice one of the interesting features, at least as I found it to be, is the different stages of development by different architects and different influences. And incorporating the Cartwright House as well, which is an early important building for the city. So the new owners of the building and hotel are planning an extensive renovation to allow more efficient use of the building, to upgrade the hotel user's experience, and to undertake a number of important repairs and conservation measures to ensure the long-term conservation of this property. In November 2017, the owners received approval for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment to enable the expansion of the hotel, and they are currently seeking this Ontario Heritage approval as well as site plan control approval so that they can carry out the associated physical works to the property. So I won't go over every single item here, but as you can see, the application does include quite a number of alterations dealing with windows, doors, roofs, stonework, landscaping, as well as a new portico, fire escapes, etc. I'm going to try my best to focus on the sort of overview of key areas, particularly looking at the additions, which are probably the most key intervention as part of this proposal. Just in terms of materials, I just want to point out that in terms of the old Sydenham HCD plan, we're looking to section 5.3.3 cladding, and 5.3.1 roofs. So we have the new materials in this application include stone masonry as well as painted fiber cement board and a standing seam metal roof. So all of these materials are traditional and as well as the modern material being this fiber cement board, but they're very complementary to the existing stonework, which is the predominant material on site. And the applicants are proposing to retain the black paint scheme on the existing windows and trim and to continue this on the new windows and doors. The old Sydenham plan advises us to use paint colors that are compatible with the heritage character of the district and complementary to the age-style detailing of the building. And although black is not necessarily characteristic of the district, it has been present on this building for a long time, and as we understand, it was a common color for banks. So as a result, staff are comfortable supporting that element of the proposal. So I'm going to move to the additions because I think they're probably the most worthy of attention and discussion in this application. So they are the principal alterations, which are two new rooftop additions located midway above the billiard room and the bowling alley. These additions are constructed of curtain glass walls with horizontal glass spandrel panels, stone walls, and painted fiber cement board clad walls. The smaller single room addition is located midpoint on the southeast corner of the billiard room, and the larger addition spans 2 floors midpoint over the bowling alley facing William Street. So the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and Sports 8 guiding principles, I want to highlight Principle 7, which is the notion of legibility in heritage conservation, and that is that new work should be distinguishable from old, and new additions should not blur the distinction between new and old. This principle is also represented in the HCD plan if you look to sections 5.2.2 additions and 5.3 alterations to heritage buildings. And in assessing whether these additions conserve the values and attributes of this property, staff have assessed the design against these additions against the HCD plan guidelines, as well as the best practices established by Parks Canada. So the addition on the southeast elevation will be minimally visible from King Street given the large setback from the front main building, the existing stone wall present, as well as the retention of the mature tree at the front of the property. Given the current corner location of the property, the William Street addition will be largely visible from the public realm. So in terms of looking at the HCD plan, we assessed against section 5.2.2, which deals with additions, and found that these additions do comply with those guidelines. So specifically, the proposed new additions do not attempt to replicate an existing heritage style, but they rather add a distinctive new layer of architecture to this property. The selected palette of materials is complementary to the stone and does not visually compete. I want to mention that this design has evolved in response to early feedback from staff. So in terms of the setback of the rooftop deck fire exit on that rear 3-story addition of the bank building, staff had encouraged the applicant to maintain the eave and a small portion of the roof to ensure that that the original form of that addition could still be read and would continue to be legible. And furthermore, the railings for the deck are clear glass panels with divisions inserted with no divisions inserted into a low aluminum base. I know there has been some back and forth on those railings. There's difference of opinions amongst the committee as to the glass versus at one point they were shown as painted black steel. So at this point in time, we are assessing them in terms of what is being proposed, which is the glass. And staff do find that they will help to minimize the massing of that new addition up top. So the design of both additions also have developed in response to consultation with the committee. The committee had voiced concerns at the pre-consultation regarding the large expanse of glass on the William Street addition that we see in front of us here. So this current proposal now includes 2 glass spandrel panels with a painted bulkhead behind that divide the 2-story expanse both horizontally and also sort of provide a definition to the cap there. Section 5.4.2, which looks at corner lot properties, advises that large areas of new glazing visible to the street should only be considered at rear additions located on corner lots. So this proposal does adhere to that guideline insofar as the addition is to the rear of this property and it is set back from the main building and from William Street. And staff do feel that the new spandrel panels help to divide this glazing in some fashion, which hopefully responded to the comments that we received from the committee. Lastly, I just wanted to point out that staff have also considered the history of this property And it's interesting evolution. So as it grew and it adapted to changing economic conditions and uses, associated with this evolution, there's a presence of a variety of building styles on the property and different types. So we have the original bank building, we also have the Cartwright House, we have the Power and Sun additions. And they've all merged together with various infill additions. So adhering to the best practice and to the old Sydenham plan, these new additions are complementary, clearly secondary in terms of their size, but most importantly, they're easily distinguishable in form and detail. So by applying these guidelines, we can be ensured that these additions represent a new layer of architecture on the site and continue to provide a legible appreciation of the evolution of this site. So I'm quickly going to move through doors and windows because I think, so Andre Schauman was retained by the applicant, and I know up front there were some concerns about the replacement of the windows on this building. So Andre did a window inventory, and his recommendations have all been adopted, which essentially seek to retain all of the original early or just good condition replacement windows on the property. So on the original bank building, all the windows on the front elevation and the William Street addition are being retained. There's actually going to be some restoration of window openings that have been elongated. They're going to go back to their original proportions. There is some blinding of doors that are no longer going to be used. These are largely to the rear of the property. The original, if not very early windows on the Cartwright House, which are multi-paned inward opening casements, they're all to be retained and repaired as well. And interestingly, or I find this interesting, the original windows on the southeast elevation of the billiard room were designed by Colin Drever, who is a well-known architect, and they are an interesting design insofar as they're a tripartite window with a large transom in the mullion section that ends at the transom, so it doesn't run all the way up. These windows are not in great condition. They are going to be replaced, but they're going to be replaced in that same sort of unique design. So the window strategy that has been presented in the application proposes the retention of a significant number of original early period wood windows. Additionally, it proposes the restoration of a number of original sash window configurations and openings that have been modified over time. And as I mentioned, of note is the rehabilitation of the Drever windows, which are peculiar and perhaps unique to this building, with new aluminum clad wood units to match this design and division of lights. So I'm just going to speak quickly about the entrance doors because that's also been an ongoing evolution and discussion. So right now the proposal includes essentially the swapping of the King Street East door and the William Street door. So the William Street doors, as you can recall, are maybe not original, but they're sort of period appropriate wooden double leaf doors. So it is generally not best practice to move historic features around on a building. However, Steph's going to I want to explain the sort of three reasons basically that led to why we find this to be a reasonable approach. So firstly, the fire marshal does have issues with the existing William Street door in terms of the width. So they want to see a wider door on the William Street exit. As well, we know that the entrance doors on William Street and King Street both are not original. We know that the William Street door is an early period double leaf wood door. And we know that at the time that the University of Toronto students did drawings of this building in 1961, that on King Street East, there was similar double leaf doors to William Street, just slightly larger. So, and lastly, the owners are obviously concerned about the ease of ingress and exits through the William Street double doors, which are awkward for people to get suitcases through and whatnot. So, the relocation of these doors will have an impact on these heritage attributes, but for the reasons noted, we are comfortable as that at least they will retain the original early William Street doors, and also to reinstate them on a prominent face of the building, so they will be quite nicely visible now. There will have to be some detailing to make them fit in terms of the window trim. I believe on the King Street elevation, we'll be losing the transom lights around that door that are obviously post-1961, so not particularly old. Lastly, in terms of entrances, as you can see here, a new awning is proposed over the William Street entrance to provide shelter and to provide a clear entrance for the hotel. There was some discussion back in August when we were on site about the design of this awning. And I'd say the major change and improvement is that it no longer steps down on the stairs. It's just one simple plane. It does, importantly, it also does not cover over the entablature over the door, which is quite beautiful, sort of sits just below. So staff see this awning as having a negligible impact on the heritage attributes and also see it as a reversible alteration, so it will only be attached at the base. Okay, lastly, I'll just quickly mention the roof, which is proposed to retain the original bank roof, but to put a new insulated roofing system over top, which is essentially comprised of new sheathing and membrane and a new metal roof. So the intention is to install, at this point, new eaves troughs above the existing stone troughs, and also to utilize the existing downpipes. Well, sorry, they aren't. Not to use utilize the downpipes, but to the holes in the downpipes to go through the cornice, so that they don't additionally create new holes in the eaves trough. Now, there's a condition regarding this roof, as the details haven't been finalized, but we are confident that the roof profile will remain the same from the street, and that at least the replacement roofing in terms of metal roofing is compatible with the architectural style of the building. So lastly, they are going to do a number of repair and repointing work to the various stonework on the building. I think a good one, a big improvement that's worth noting, is the removal of the metal coping on the stone wall on King Street East and the repair replacement of that stone coping underneath. A bunch of landscaping is proposed around the building. Staff is confident that all of that landscaping will conserve the setting of this building. So in terms of comments from the committee, we did receive some written comments for the formal application. Largely, they related to the proposed glass additions. One member suggested that the expanse of glass be divided either into 2 stories or by adding another solid element. So the proposal has evolved to attempt to address that in terms of the glass spandrel with bulkhead behind horizontal panels. There was also concerns about the visibility through the glass to a private space that we can't moderate, we can't control, and what would be visible. And I mean, this is a very interesting, relevant comment. Under the Ontario Heritage Act, we can't regulate that interior and how that space functions. And I think additionally, staff don't anticipate that the pedestrian will see a tremendous amount through that glass. This is a northeast facing elevation, so we'll have less direct sunlight. I think earlier concerns regarding the replacement of the original early wood windows have been addressed now through Andre Scheinman's report, and the application now proposes a really great program for the windows. So upon review of all the relevant materials and comments from the committee, I will put before you the recommendation, which spans 3 pages. So essentially, I guess I might just draw your attention to the conditions. There's quite a number of conditions, but they largely relate to detailed designs with regards to windows, color schemes, the roofing system, etc. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Right, first point is to ask the committee whether their dash comments have been captured in the Heritage staff's report. In my case, I think they have. I'm very happy with that. And now we can have comments from and questions from the public. That includes the applicants if they wish to do so. Okay. And then we, I think, are ready for a recommendation or a motion to put the recommendation on the floor. So could I have a motion to approve the recommendations? Catherine and Liz, right. So now comments from the committee on, final comments that can be forwarded with the staff report to council. Who would like to speak? Anyone? Catherine?
Well, I really like this design when we had the site visit, and I still like it. I really, as I mentioned earlier, I think the curtain walls reflect the fact that usage changes over time, and that rather than keep on aping what you think would look like the original, to actually make it very clear that this was done in 2018-19, rather than, wondering when it was done. So I really congratulate the applicant and the architect and Andre for really bringing this building back to its landmark status. I think that it's been looking a bit sad over the years, sadder and sadder, and I think that giving it this facelift and also making it more relevant to 2018 is, they should be congratulated. Thank you.
I'll make a comment. Liz, could you take the chair, please?
Yes, and I recognize you.
Yeah, well, to say that the committee should be very pleased with the tremendous effort and investment that the applicants are making to renew this very important property, and we look forward to the outcomes and hope it is very successful. So there have been some concerns about some details, but I'm also impressed with the way staff and the applicants have responded, at least to some extent, to our input. It's kind of a pity that almost the only significant, well, it's a huge project. I and others have some concerns, not everybody, about the glass addition. And that's always that kind of thing is always a major question in any kind of renovation of or extension of heritage buildings. We've probably all heard about the controversies about the sort of addition to the Chateau Laurier in Ottawa. And, that's a big deal. And there are no rights and wrongs. There are different viewpoints. And some people think, yeah, we should show that we're no longer in the 19th century, we're in this century, and there should be evidence of that. The architect has given us a number of examples of substantial glass additions to heritage buildings, and some of them, some people might say that's great, some people may say, well, I'm not sure that's great, but it's happened. These things are common, and as I say, there are no rights and wrongs, but I guess what this committee is concerned with is this particular application, and not try to say that what has been done at RMC, for instance, can be done here. In this case, we have guidelines for the district, and I think other things being equal, we should pay attention to the guidelines. And to me, the guidelines don't really support such a large extent of glass. And I found to me, what is the relevant thing? I mean, this is an addition, and there's section 5.33 that refers to cladding, and what it says is that it says cladding on a new addition should be distinct from the existing, and that's what's happened. There's no question about that. That's good. The next paragraph says acceptable cladding includes brick, stone, wood clapboard, painted fiber cement board, stucco, shingles. Glass is not included. And maybe that's could be open to debate, but the fact, in my mind, the guidelines do not support the use of glass in an extensive way as an addition. So I have concerns, but again, I'm not saying what's being proposed is wrong, but there is no right and wrong. This is a case where the community is supposed to provide input. The community and the guidelines are supposed to guide renovations. And so I have a real problem supporting the recommendation, even though I'm enthusiastic about 99% of it. There's this part of it that I wish it weren't there. So I wish there were an alternative. But again, it's not terrible. A lot of terrible things, worse things have gone on in the district and will in the future. So it's a borderline call in my case. So, but I think the important thing is that the issue is in the open, and these comments are being recorded and will presumably be forwarded to council in some way or other. So that's how I see this particular issue, and so I've finished with my comments. So Liz, you can return the chair if you're ready.
And I return the chair.
Are there comments? Jane.
From reading my dash comments that everyone knows, I have concerns about the glass additions as well. And my concern is within a heritage conservation district and what sort of precedent that this might be setting for other additions within this district. So I would just like to say that I still have concerns about it. And there are lots of great things about this project. If it were a part 4, I might have fewer concerns, but within the district, there are district guidelines.
Other comments? Okay, so again, I think the view of this committee is we're really very positive about almost everything. There's just reservations about the windows, but calling the vote to approve the recommendation as set forward. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So it's just split vote, yeah. So anyway, that's the message. There's no doubt this is going to go forward, and I wish the applicant success. Thank you. We continue to the last item, which is a notice of intention to demolish a barn on a listed property. And I should say this isn't really a business item because we're not going to debate this. This is but just so people know, this is a property in the country that is listed but not designated. And there is a barn on the property which is, I think, pretty clearly in poor condition. And so the owners wish to demolish it. They feel it's necessary to demolish it, and it appears that they have strong evidence for that. But I think we do not have, because it's not designated, we don't have to recommend approval of the demolition. However, this committee can recommend designation of the property, in which case we would have input on demolition of the barn. So I think the only question, and we're not considering it here, but the only question in our minds should be whether the property should be designated. And there is a working group meeting next week, and I think that we should members should bring that forward for discussion next week. So
she just has to make a phone call, emergency phone call.
So let's take a 5-minute recess. I think there's very little more business, but we can't proceed without a quorum. We don't have a quorum at the moment. So. So I don't think there's really any more to say about this demolition. I mean, should I ask if there are any questions about it?
But it's kind of one of those things where
Yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah,
Then we have the notes from our
yeah. All right, thank you, Jane. We're almost finished, but as far as this item on demolishing the barn, I don't think there's any discussion, but if there are any questions about what I've said, you can ask a question. Yes?
The question first is, the owner isn't required to do extensive photography of the barn, is that correct? We've often had a discussion, if someone's going to tear down a very old barn, it should at least have photographic evidence. You know, but we don't require that under our city rules, correct? Under a listed building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the limitations under the Heritage Act for a property that's listed is pretty minimal. There's a lot of limitations. We cannot impose conditions on the demo. We cannot impose conditions on our recommendations when a property gives their notice of intention to demo. We have talked to the owner. We have photographed the building, and he seems pretty open to doing that for us. So we would follow through and encourage that. We cannot require it through this process.
Yeah, that was actually just going to be my comment after that. I'm really pleased that we do have this really good evidence because it is part of what we hope for. At least if something is going down, we know exactly what it looked like, how it was constructed, especially since he says he's going to reuse a lot of the material. That's really encouraging. And I'm glad to hear that it will be looked at as a designation probability. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Fine, we'll move on. The working group reports, and the addendum has a report from the Heritage Properties Working Group, and I need a motion to receive that report. Liz, and I'll second it. I think those are all. There's the addendum also includes an emergency.
Just you could vote on that.
Oh, yes, sorry, vote on the motion to receive the working group report. Thank you. And then there's an update regarding emergency approval. There's something again on the addendum that if there are any questions on that, you can raise them. There's no other business, no motions, correspondence. Next meeting is Wednesday, November 21st at 9:30. And I'll ask for a vote, motion to adjourn. Thank you. All in favor? Motion. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.